Welcome to Baker Elementary's November Parent Workshop, where we will be talking about the book, One Day, The End. I'm Karen Boss. I am the Library Media Aide and librarian at Baker. We are going to talk a lot today about skill building found in wordless picture books and how they, in books like One Day, The End, can help improve your child's comprehension skills, inference, and storytelling abilities. Most of you joining me today likely have preschoolers up to first graders, maybe some Stevie age kids. My kids are older now. I have a senior and a fifth grader, so it's been a while since I spent a lot of time reading them picture books, though I do read to 28 classes a week. But I can well remember rereading these same books over and over and over again with my kids. And I know you guys are probably doing a lot of the same right now with kids being home more often and a lot of remote learning. And we kind of get into a reading rut. You're reading the same book. By the time you've read it a handful of times, you read every sentence, words with the same inflection, and there's not a lot new that you're finding in it, and you just kind of get into autopilot. And while this is great, this does help your students because one of the things they're going to be seeing is that you are reading words, and as they hear you and they're memorizing it too, they're going to be able to retell those stories, and slowly that link between seeing the word and saying the word is going to come together. Like I can tell you, like my son and daughter both loved the Olivia series by Ian Falconer, and I could probably still recite every single book and every single line, and I will read it exactly the same way as I did 10 years ago. And you even will read things the way you've heard them. My daughter says my mom and I read How the Grinch Stole Christmas exactly the same way every time. We have the same inflections on words. Well, she read it to me for years, and then I read it to my kids, and of course, it's coming out the same. And this is great for your kids. They're going to hear these books over and over and over again. They love the stories, and it's going to help them to learn how to read the stories themselves. But I know one of the hardest things as we are looking at early readers and pre-readers is this desire for them to read the words. You want them to sit there and, pound it out, get every word right, and it can be a real frustration as a parent, when you don't have all those same skills. You haven't been in the trainings, you haven't been to school to be a teacher to help learn how to teach these kids to read. And there's this expectation that you're going to live up to what others have done before you. Oh, my kid was reading at 4 years old. Well, don't worry about it. All of your reading to your kids is building those reading skills. And so today, though, I want to talk about reading books that really don't have words. And I know that I've heard people myself kind of poo-pooing wordless picture books, like, why bother? How is this reading a book? Well, just like reading a story, when we sit down in the library and we've got our little pre-readers who are getting their books, is you're asking them to look at the pictures because they don't know the words. So, and I think that is one of the most valuable things in a wordless picture book is it's teaching them more how to look at that and to build confidence. So it's going to help them build confidence in their abilities to tell stories. Now, I have a very deep love for wordless picture books. I was an art major in college, and so to me, most wordless picture books are a work of art. Some of my favorites are by Aaron Becker, who has a series called Journey. And my fifth grader loves this series. It doesn't, because he can tell the story himself, but yet it all unfolds in the pictures in beautiful ways. So I once had a teacher come up, and I had some books on display. Like I have a little shelf that I set aside when kids forget to return their library books. And I always include wordless picture books on this display because most of my kids aren't reading. I mean, we have preschool through first grade in our building. So yeah, some of my first graders are really reading well. but some are still struggling. So I always include wordless picture books. And so this teacher comes up and he doesn't understand why wordless picture books. It makes no sense to him. At which point I'm like, you have to look at the stories. It allows you to build those skills. So for an author illustrator to create these wordless picture books, it means they have to figure out how to tell a full story without uttering more than a few words. Some, like Mr. Waffles, I think there's literally one actual paragraph of words, and it's a sentence, I think. Some, like Journey, have absolutely no words whatsoever. Some of my other favorite ones have a single word as the entire book. Like there's a book called Ball, and the whole book is ball with different inflection, and you have to figure out what it is based either on punctuation or what you're seeing in the image. And that's a lot of fun because this is when you can talk to them, well, what do you think is happening in this picture? And the dog's like jumping up and down in excitement because the girl's holding the ball. Well, he's anticipating getting the ball, and she's saying, do you want the ball? And the only word in the entire book is ball. But there's so much to be learned from it. And then there's details. So like the book Ball, not a lot of details in the pictures. It's literally looking at expression and action that the author illustrator has given us. Whereas then you go into a book like Journey, and I'll just open up to a page, and you just see the beauty of how much is going on here as the girl walks through this doorway. You can see the room she's coming from and where she's going and all the different things happening. And these can get so detailed of what's going on in the books. I love in Mr. Waffles, which to me is a great book. I got a chance to see David Wiesner talk about this book and his process and things to find, and just, the little details. Like here, they're all these little aliens are speaking, but you get to fill in the blanks on what they are saying. So there are a number of things like that, the detail. Like you can tell a new story every time you read these books. You can ask them to see if they see something that you don't see. There's been times I don't notice something, and like there'll be hidden pictures, and a child will notice the hidden things that are on every page, and I've read the story for an entire week to a class and don't notice it. So asking questions is very important. I'm going to go through a few points that I feel are why wordless picture books. So first off, wordless picture books help with comprehension skills. So one of the things that we ask kids when they start reading is to retell stories. They're hearing it, well, what happened? Well, wordless picture books are a great way to talk to them about remembering what happened, because they are participating in a wordless picture book in a way that they aren't in any other story that you would read to them. Because you're going to sit there and you're discussing what's happening on the page and where do you think it's going. So it's also helping them to predict based on previous knowledge, based on hints that the book gives, on what things are going to happen next. So it just helps them build those connections of saying, what do you think, what has just happened? What do you think is going to happen? Why do you think it's going to happen? And it's a great way for you to model storytelling. And I know this can be a little awkward and challenging at first because you're like, I just read the books. And I know that I've felt that way before where, I just read the books to the kids, and I don't get a lot of time, now, like I did when my kids were younger, to really sit with small groups, one-on-one with students to really talk about what's going on. And that is a very important thing to do with your students, is you're going to model the storytelling, but then you're also going to ask them to participate in it as well. The second thing that is awesome about wordless picture books is the amount of confidence that it can build and independence. One of the things that I hear a lot in my library is, when the kids check out their books, we send them off after I'm busy checking them out. Their teacher's helping somebody else find a book, and they're like, well, I'm supposed to go read this, but I don't know how to read. I know that, buddy, but you know what? You can look at the pictures. Start. And so we ask this of them regularly at school, but at home is the time when you can sit with them and be like, let's look at these pictures and see what's happening. Maybe we can predict what's going to happen in the story. But then over time, it allows them to build that confidence that says, hey, I know what's going to happen, or this is what's happening in this story, and they can be telling it to you, and they're not getting the words wrong. And I think that spot where I know what's happening and I don't have to know exactly what the word says is huge for them in learning how to read, because I know it's hard not to correct them when you're asking them to read hop on pop and it's not, what's that first letter sound? Well, now they can just pick out the words. They can tell it in their own way. So this gives them that chance to build their storytelling confidence without the moments of failure where I got that word wrong. So the next thing that is going to be really helped and improved by wordless picture books is vocabulary and verbal skills. So sometimes our kids have trouble coming up with new words or different ways of telling something. And by sitting with them and going through a wordless picture book, you have an opportunity to use different words with them, but also in asking them to describe the story, they're building verbal skills that you wouldn't necessarily get if you're just reading words in an early reader book. So they become active participants in this story, and you can model descriptive words. So as you're talking about, say, something in like Journey, like you have this amazing scene of this castle. You can talk about textures. You can talk about materials that might have gone into this. You can talk about colors, like what do you think the roof here is made out of? It just provides this opportunity, and there's so much happening. I mean, the story is really starting over here with the girl on her little red boat heading into this castle. Is it a fortress? Is it a compound? Is it a, sorry, my vocabulary is paused right now, but like there's so many ways that you can describe this place. And then you can ask them the questions of what they're seeing. What details do they notice? And then so that allows you to describe the setting. Well, when do you think this is? Where do you think this is? Is this someplace close to where we live? Does it look similar? What's different? And sometimes you can talk about the characters in the story. Like in Journey, there's just the girl traveling. But here in Mr. Waffles, you've got the main character, Mr. Waffles, who is the cat. But then you have this alien ship and all of the aliens inside it. And you can, and then they get some assistance, but you can talk about dialogue. They can make up their own dialogue, which is one of the things I love about this scene, is clearly these aliens have a lot to say, but I don't know what 3 squares means, or all of these little signs here. But this is a chance that you can say, well, what do you think they're saying? Maybe they're asking a question. Here's something broken. And you can fill in dialogue. And it gives them a chance to be creative and build those verbal skills. So I'm going to write these things down and add this in a clip or in an attachment, but questions that you should be asking. What is happening? Tell me about the characters. What are their emotions? Look at their faces. What does that tell you? What are some other options? Like sometimes a kid will see a face and they'll be like, oh, they're sad. Well, do you think they're sad? Do you think they're worried? Expand on that. What do you think they're thinking? Sometimes, they have an expression that they're thinking about something, but clues in the picture will tell you, what it is. So how do you know that? What are the characters' goals or missions? Like in Mr. Waffles, these characters, these aliens have this mission to repair their spaceship so they can leave. And Mr. Waffles has this mission to catch them because obviously it's his new favorite toy. What are they saying? The setting. What is the setting? What's going to happen next? What would you want to happen next? How do you know that? So these are all just different things you can use, all these probing questions that help you build on to the story. So the other thing is that I mentioned a little bit was the introducing new vocabulary. So this is your chance to add words they don't know. Heck, pull out your phone and check the your thesaurus and let's see what other things can mean the same thing or something similar. Then visual cues would be the next main thing that you're going to look for. So you're going to use these visual cues in the book to help you tell stories. So, directions that characters are moving, other things that are happening in the pictures. It also, visual cues are something that is going to help them with their reading ability because this is where they build skills when there are words and they don't know a word. So you've got a long sentence and maybe you know most of them and there's this new big kind of descriptive word and you're not sure what it is. Well, let's look at the picture. Because when you're in wordless picture books, you're already looking at the picture to tell the story. So you can now add that in and use that with regular books to actually figure out words. And that's a huge, huge, huge reading skill. So the last 2 points that I want to talk to you about with wordless picture books also are going to drag us into our book for this one Day the End, and why I chose this book. So our last 2 skills that we are really going to work on with wordless picture books and books with not a lot of words is developing storytelling skills and helping them with story starters for their writing abilities later on. And this is why I picked One Day the End as the book, and I hope all of you watching this, if you did not get a copy of it, please do. And I'm actually going to go through after this and read the book with you. But what I love about One Day the End is every story, there is a beginning and an end, but what happens in between makes all the difference. So this is, let's call it your primer. You're getting started with wordless picture books. They're intimidating. It takes a lot of time and effort to really sit there with your family and with your child and look at them. And, if it's not something you're familiar with, it's going to take a little time. And so that's why with One Day the End, it's like a stepping stone. So each page is literally one sentence. It says, this first one day I went home, one day I went to school. I came home. The end. But this leaves you with so many other things that are happening in the pictures. So I'm going to add in pictures at this point and go through this book with you and kind of talk about what's happening in ways that you can talk to the kids. So as you're developing storytelling skills with them, you're focusing on sequences of events. And this is a great book for that. So in our first one, she goes to school. And you can see that she not only goes to school, but her cat's involved. She's chasing her cat. She drops her bag. Her books spill out. She looks like she's running late to class. Her teacher's not looking very happy. You can talk about his expression. Then it looks like they're having a science project and make a lot of mess. Then she's walking back home, sees an ice cream truck, has some money, manages to get some ice cream, but drops it and the dog gets it. But then she picks it back up and has it. So these are all of these pictures, it tells this whole story, and you can talk about so many things from her emotions to the teacher's expression to, the different details of the cat coming and going from the pictures and what's happening in class. And every time they go through this, maybe you're going to see something new. Their ability to tell it happens differently. So you want to say, where's the beginning of this story? What happens in the middle? What happens next? How does it end? And then this is a great one for story starters. So when you're getting to the point, you've got your first grader who is looking at, needs to tell a story. This is a great way. Well, let's fill this story in. Maybe this is a great at-home day project for virtual school, is let's write the sentences that go in between one day I went to school, I came home, the end. Like, you can take each picture separately and, hey, let's do sentences that go with this. What do you think about this? And so for your pre-readers, they can talk it out with you. Maybe you write it down for them. They can draw pictures that go along with the other things. And so our next one day I lost my dog. And all of the things happening here, where are the dogs going? What's going on with the squirrel? So many things. And then I found him, the end. So there's so many things you can fill in the middle of this story. And so I feel like wordless picture books are, give you all of these same skills, but one day the end is going to be like your little primer to get started at wordless picture books and talking to your kids and inferring what's happening in there and expanding their vocabulary. And I'm going to put a whole list of other wordless picture books that for you guys to check out and enjoy and kind of broaden your libraries, that it's not just about reading the words. Reading is wonderful, but there are so many skills that go into reading that can be found in other places, and get rid of that frustration for a while. Trying something new is a lot of fun, and adding something to your repertoire of, hey, how can I expand on this? How can I improve this? How can I give my kids something else to do, when it's, hey, we got to do our 30 minutes of reading. Well, how does that look today? And so let's try something a little bit different. So I hope you enjoy One Day the End. I hope you get a chance to pick up some other wordless picture books and explore some of the skills that we talked about today. Thank you. One Day, the End. Short, very short, shorter than ever stories by Rebecca K. Dotlich, illustrated by Fred Kohler. For every story, there is a beginning and an end, but what happens in between makes all the difference. One day, I went to school. I came home. The end. I lost my dog. I found him. The end. One day, I hid from my brother. He found me. One day, I made something. I gave it to my mom. The end. One day, I ran away. I came home. The end. One day, I wanted to be a spy. I was. The end. One day, I felt like stomping. Stomp, 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 stomp. The end. One day, I took a bath. So did my dog. The end. One day, I wanted to write a book. So I did. The end.